Welcome to this episode of the Dropout Multi-Millionaire Podcast, where we talk about tactical business strategy, building high-performance sales teams, and growing your business. If you're ready to break free from the status quo and join the ranks of the mavericks, the rebels, and the renegades who refuse to conform and instead build multi-million-dollar businesses, then buckle up, because here we go. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Dropout Multi-Millionaire Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Will. And today we're going to continue our discussion on the process of the psychology of sales. And then after today's episode, if you want to get more information, I have a brand new free sales community. Or if you'd like to get the brand new sales training video course, which covers everything we're going to talk about today in way more detail, you can go to my website at brianwillmedia.com/sales. This is 30 years of sales training available for pennies on the dollar. And that's pennies on the dollar compared to having me come into your workplace to do this live over a couple days. All right, let's jump right in here and talk about the sales process. What does it look like and how does it work? And I want to lay out this entire process for you today. And we're going to start with the 4 boxes. And by the way, that includes getting your client to actually close themselves. And then we will talk about scripting and finally a little bit about sales management. In my training, I teach you how to take your client through 4 very specific parts of the sale. I call it the 4 boxes. The first one is the introduction. The second box I call the fact finding. The third is the presentation. And the fourth box, what most people think they come here to listen for and to learn, the fourth box is called the close. Each of these boxes are important, but they are important for different reasons. So let's go over them. Box 1. Let's start with the introduction. Now, this is only about 10% of the sales process, but this is where we introduce ourselves to the client and we overcome the first objection. Executed properly, the introduction will begin to lower the wall of mistrust and get your prospect to at least give you a chance to gain their trust. And trust and likability are 2 of the 5 keys to the magic of closing. If you screw this part up and you don't overcome the first objection, you will be battling that client for the rest of your time with them. And so people say, okay, so what is the first objection? Well, here it is. People don't like salespeople, and you're a salesperson. That is your first objection, and that is the one that you need to learn how to overcome. The second box is fact finding. Now, fact finding. This one is about 70% of the sales process. This is actually where the sale is going to be made, not in the presentation or the close. That is a common misconception with most salespeople. This is where we ask them everything we need to know to get them to close themselves. We get the whys, and there are multiple whys, and we get the when, and then we anchor their budget from top to bottom. The fact-finding section is where we overcome most, if not all, of the known objections that they could have, but they now won't have because you will learn to get through them before they actually have them. This is where we use active listening and connective response. The lesson here is talk less and listen more. If you can get them to laugh, that's a huge winner. That's how you make a connection. And once again, by the way, if I didn't say this before, talk less. That's the big one. The third box is the presentation, and that is about 10% of the sales process. Once again, here's the key to your presentation. Talk less. That's the third time I've said it. That means it's really important to learn. Presentation box is not where you are presenting your product or service to the client. You should have already done that in the fact finding. This is not where you try to educate the client on everything there is to know about everything you know. This is where you're going to explain to them what they've already decided to buy. And you're going to do that in as few words as possible. You have to remember human psychology. People only remember 20 to 30% of what they hear. So, the more you talk, the less they remember. Your job is not to educate them. Your job is to make them fall in love with whatever your product or service is and how it's going to fix or solve whatever problem they came to see you about. The fourth box is the close. And again, it's about 10% of the process. If you are in the fourth box by now, your client should have already agreed that they understand how your product works. They should have already agreed that it fits their need. And they should have already agreed that it fits in the anchored budget that they gave you. There's not really anything left here except to agree to move forward with the purchase. The close should be a given if you got the last three things I just mentioned. Too many sales reps get wrapped up in trying to close someone when a properly executed fact finding should have had them close themselves. Okay, those are the four boxes, and we get into a lot more detail in the training series. It's 15 or 16 videos. It's got a workbook. We get really in depth with that training. I suggest, again, that you use both specific and general scripting in your sales process. And when I say specific, I mean there are a few things that you need to say every single time that you're in the sale. When I say general scripting, I mean that there is a framework of questions that you need to move through to get the information you need, which is the whys, the when, and the anchored budget. In both cases, by the way, it's not just about reading a script, it's about inserting your personality into the process. With that being said, however, I should be able to wake you up out of a dead sleep and ask you a question, and you should be able to respond to that question without even thinking about it. And by the way, that type of repetitiveness creates confidence, and confidence sells. Confidence comes from repetition. Repetition comes from role playing and practice. Here's what I want you to remember. Sales is not about cheesy lines. It is not about manipulating people to do something that they don't want to do. Great salespeople help clients figure out exactly what they want and then show them how their product or service does exactly that and does it for the price that they want to pay. And this is something you can learn to do. Great salespeople understand how people think and why they do and don't buy. And by the way, that is the psychology of sales. And finally, I want to talk to sales managers. You know, as a sales manager, you have one goal, and that is to make your members, your team members, better. If you're managing a team, then you know that you have sales reps at all different levels of production. Your job is to help each one of them get better. Your job is to optimize productivity against marketing spend. Your job is to manage each sales rep's personal P&L statement, profit and loss statement. And if you don't know what an individual sales rep P&L statement is, you need to call me. This training will make your team better. It will give you higher close ratios, more revenue per sale, lower customer acquisition costs, higher return on advertising spend, which means more profit. Everybody makes more money. All right, here's my pitch. Go to my website, brianwillmedia.com/sales. The link to the information on the full training program is there. It's a 15 video module masterclass in sales along with a workbook. It's a shorter version of everything I teach in my face-to-face trainings. You also have the option after the course to work with me one-on-one to really drill down on your sales skills. I'm telling you, this course will make you and your sales team better. It just will. So that's it for today. I appreciate you all being with me on the Dropout Multimillionaire podcast. And remember, you have to be in the game to win the game. So let's get in the game. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you would like to get more information on either one of my books or my one-on-one coaching programs, you can find me at brianwillmedia.com or thedropoutmm.com.